Life in my early years was a silent movie, played within the confines of a home that felt more like a fortress. My family, bound by strict norms that bordered on the extreme, watched my every move, every word, and every breath I took. It was a life of muted colors, where expressions were guarded, and spontaneity was a distant dream. My grandmother, Eleanor, was the first crack in that rigid world. She saw the life I was living and decided it was no life for a child. With a determination that matched her compassion, she pulled me out of that house when I was 13 and introduced me to a world where love wasn't just a whispered word but an everyday reality. Under her care, I blossomed. I traded silence for soft laughter, restrictions for freedom, and fear for love. But the shadows of my early years lingered, shaping me into a shy, modest young woman whose comfort zone was the small, safe world I had built around myself. Web design became my chosen path, a career that allowed me to weave my creativity into the fabric of the digital world while staying within the protective walls of my home. My laptop was my window to the world, a world where I could be bold in my designs yet safeguarded from the direct gaze of society. On my 30th birthday, Grandma Eleanor decided it was time for me to meet someone, a thought that both thrilled and terrified me. Through her network, she found Ethan, a man just a few years my senior, known for his charm and seemingly gentle nature. Our first meeting was at a local diner, a place where the aroma of coffee and the buzz of quiet conversations created a comforting backdrop. Ethan walked in, his presence like a new chapter waiting to be written. "Lily, right? Your grandma's told me so much about you. Heard you're quite the artist with your web designs," Ethan said, his voice smooth, his smile easy. A blush crept up my cheeks, unaccustomed to such direct praise. "Thank you, Ethan. That's kind of you to say. And yes, design is my passion." As we talked, a connection began to form, gentle and tentative, like the first rays of sun after a long night. Ethan's words were like a balm, soothing the years of conditioned caution and reserve. "Lily, there's something about you. Your modesty, it's refreshing in this loud world. It's like discovering a quiet cove in a stormy sea," he said, his gaze holding mine with an intensity that stirred something deep within me. His words, so full of promise and understanding, touched a part of me that I had kept hidden, locked away from the world. "You know, Lily, I've always believed that true strength lies in being yourself, in a world that tries to make you like everyone else. I see that strength in you," Ethan continued, his voice sincere and warm. The days following that first meeting with Ethan were like stepping into a new world, one where the colors were brighter, and life felt more vivid. Our encounters were simple but meaningful, centered around long conversations over coffee, walks in the park, and shared laughter that seemed to echo long after we parted. One brisk afternoon, as we strolled through the park with leaves crunching under our feet, Ethan turned to me, his eyes shining with an idea. "Lily, you ever been to the old Wilson's farm? They've got this apple orchard, look straight out at a postcard in the fall." I shook my head, a smile spreading across my face. "Can't say I have, Ethan. My adventures have been pretty limited to the digital world, you know?" He chuckled, a sound that warmed me from the inside out. "Well, guess it's about time we change that. What'd you say about going there this Saturday? They say there's nothing like picking apples on a crisp fall morning." And just like that, our quiet, comfortable routine expanded to include these little adventures. Each moment with Ethan felt like a step away from my old life, a life of restrictions and silence, into something more vibrant, more alive. The days turned into weeks, and the connection between us grew stronger, more profound. It wasn't just about shared interests or mutual attraction, it was about understanding, about finding someone who saw me for who I was and cherished that. One cool evening, as we sat on a bench watching the sun dip below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Ethan's voice broke the comfortable silence between us. "Lily, I've got to tell you, these past weeks with you, they've been something else. You've got this quiet strength, this grace about you. It's rare, and it's beautiful," he said, his words wrapping around me like a warm blanket. His compliment caught me off guard, and I felt a blush rise to my cheeks. "Thank you, Ethan. I don't know what to say. You make it easy to be myself, to open up." He took my hand in his touch gentle yet firm. "That's all I ask, Lily. For you to be yourself. Because who you are is pretty amazing." I was thinking, maybe, just maybe, we can turn us into something more, something lasting. His words hung in the air, a question and a promise all at once. I looked into his eyes, seeing not just the man I had come to know and care for, but a future, a possibility of a life filled with laughter, understanding, and love. I'd like that, Ethan. More than you know, I replied, my heart feeling lighter, more hopeful than it had in years. Life took a sharp turn when I moved in with Ethan and his mother, Mrs. Clayton. The house, which I had imagined would be a sanctuary of love and warmth, quickly revealed itself as a battleground of expectations and criticism. It was on the first morning in my new home that Mrs. Clayton laid down the law. I was in the kitchen, trying to make a good impression by preparing breakfast, when she walked in, her eyes scanning the room like a hawk. Lily, let's get one thing straight. You're part of this family now, and in this house, we have rules. You're gonna take care of the cooking and the cleaning. Got it? Her voice was sharp, leaving no room for protest. Taken aback, I could only nod. Yes, Mrs. Clayton. I understand, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Her eyes narrowed as she inspected the kitchen. And I expect things to be done right. I run a tight ship here. No slacking. With that, she left the room, leaving me to absorb the reality of my new life. Each day became a relentless cycle of household chores. I'd wake up early, cook breakfast, then clean, then work on my web design projects, and then cook again. It was as if my entire existence had been reduced to serving the needs of the house. Ethan, whom I had thought to be my partner and protector, seemed oblivious to the strain I was under. One evening, after a particularly grueling day, I decided to voice my concerns. Ethan, I need to talk to you about something, I started, my hands nervously twisting the dish towel. He looked up from his laptop, his expression one of mild annoyance. What's up, Lily? It's about your mom, and the housework. It's a lot. And I feel like it's all on me, I said, the words spilling out in a rush. Ethan's eyes went back to his screen as he shrugged. Well, yeah. Mom said in her ways. It's just how things are done here. You'll get used to it. But, Ethan, it's not fair. It's not right. I'm working too, and I have my own life. I'm not just here to cook and clean, I protested, feeling a spark of defiance ignite within me. Ethan sighed, a sound of exasperation. Lily, don't make a big deal out of this. Mom's the boss of the house. Just try to keep her happy, okay? His words felt like a slap, a stark reminder that my feelings, my exhaustion, were of little consequence in this household. The web of control in the Clayton household tightened its grip around me as the days passed. It wasn't just about the cooking and cleaning anymore. My modest earnings from web design, which I had cherished as my own, became the next target in the Clayton family's playbook of dominance. It was a typical evening. I was sitting at the dining table, finalizing a project on my laptop, when Ethan and Mrs. Clayton cornered me with a conversation I wasn't prepared for. Lily, we need to talk about your work, Ethan started, his tone serious. I looked up, puzzled. My work? What about it? Mrs. Clayton interjected, her voice sharp and commanding. Your money, dear. It's time you start contributing to the household. You live here, after all. I felt a knot form in my stomach. But I do contribute, Mrs. Clayton. I take care of the house, the meals. Ethan cut me off. That's not enough, Lily. We're talking about financial contribution. Your earnings should be going into the family account. It's only fair. The unfairness of it all hit me like a wave. But that's my money, Ethan. I earn it. I have my own expenses, my own needs. Mrs. Clayton scoffed. Needs? What needs could you possibly have that are more important than this family? No, dear, your place is to support this household, just like we support you. Ethan nodded in agreement, his eyes void of the understanding and warmth they once held. It's decided then. From now on, your earnings go to the family account. I'll take care of the finances. I felt cornered, trapped. The little financial independence I had was being stripped away, leaving me more vulnerable than ever. But Ethan, this isn't right. It's not fair. I should have a say in how my money is used. He shrugged, a cold, dismissive gesture that sent shivers down my spine. Fair? Life's not fair, Lily. You're part of this family now, and this is how things work here. Mrs. Clayton's eyes bore into me, ensuring her message was loud and clear. You'll thank us later, dear. We're teaching you how to be part of a family, how to be a proper wife. As they left me there, alone with my racing thoughts, the reality of my situation became painfully clear. My income, my hard-earned money, was now under their control. Trapped in the Clayton household, my life had become a never-ending cycle of servitude. The financial control Ethan and his mother exerted over me was suffocating. My earnings, once a source of independence, were now tightly gripped in their hands. The situation was unbearable, yet I felt powerless to change it. One day, I decided to seek solace in the one place I always felt understood, the web design forum. Typing away on my laptop, I poured my heart out to Sarah, a fellow designer I had befriended online. Sarah, I'm in a bad place. Ethan and his mom, they're controlling everything, even my earnings. I don't know what to do, I typed, the words on the screen blurring through my tears. Almost instantly, Sarah's reply popped up. Lily, that's not right. They're manipulating you. That's financial abuse, you know. Her words were a jolt of reality. Abuse? I typed back, the word feeling foreign yet painfully accurate. Yes, abuse. Lily, you need to protect yourself. Read up on psychological abuse and financial control. Knowledge is power, Sarah urged. Taking her advice to heart, I started reading. Books on psychology, articles on financial abuse, stories of people who had walked the path I was on. The more I read, the clearer the picture became. Ethan and Mrs. Clayton weren't just overbearing, they were abusers, using manipulation and control to keep me under their thumb. One evening, as I was absorbed in a book on psychological growth, Mrs. Clayton barged into my room, her eyes scanning the title in my hands. What's this nonsense you're reading, Lily? She demanded, her voice dripping with disdain. It's a book on personal growth, Mrs. Clayton, I replied, a newfound strength in my voice. She snorted, personal growth? Don't fill your head with such rubbish. Your place is here, taking care of this family, not reading silly books. But her words, which would have once sent me into a spiral of self-doubt, now bounced off me. I had begun to see through their game, to understand the dynamics of control and abuse. Ethan, your mother thinks my reading is rubbish, I said later that evening, hoping to find an ally in him. Ethan, however, was far from supportive. Mom's right, Lily. You're getting ideas above your station. Focus on your duties here. That's what's important. His words were a crushing blow, yet they only fueled my determination. It was clear now, I was alone in this fight. But I was no longer the timid, compliant Lily they thought they knew. The knowledge I had armed myself with was my weapon, and I was ready to use it. Life at the Claytons had pushed me to my limits. I had been enduring, silently suffering under the weight of their control and manipulation. But everything changed the day fate intervened in the most unexpected way. It was a regular morning, and I was out running errands, lost in my thoughts, when suddenly, out of nowhere, a car came speeding around the corner. Before I could react, everything went black. I woke up in a sterile hospital room, my body aching and my mind foggy. As my vision cleared, I saw Ethan and Mrs. Clayton standing by my bedside. But their expressions weren't of concern or worry, they were of irritation and anger. Lily, what were you thinking, wandering around like that? Do you have any idea how inconvenient this is for us? Ethan's voice was harsh, void of any warmth. Mrs. Clayton chimed in, her words sharp and cold. Yes, and now who's going to take care of the house, the cooking, the cleaning? You've put us in quite a bind, Lily. I lay there, stunned, not by the pain from my injuries, but by the sheer lack of empathy from the people I had been living with. I'm sorry. I managed to whisper, the words tasting bitter in my mouth. Ethan's face twisted into a scowl. Sorry doesn't cut it, Lily. We need you back on your feet, taking care of your responsibilities. This little stunt of yours is unacceptable. Mrs. Clayton nodded in agreement, her eyes scanning me with disdain. Absolutely. And once you're back, we expect you to make up for the lost time. No slacking. Their words, their complete disregard for my well-being, lit a fire within me. It was the turning point, the moment I realized that I was nothing more than a convenience to them, a tool to be used and discarded at will. Enough, I said, my voice stronger than I felt. I'm not your maid, not your cook, not your ATM. I'm a human being, and I deserve respect, care, and empathy, none of which you've shown. Ethan's eyes widened in shock, clearly not expecting resistance. Lily, you're not thinking straight. You need to calm down and think about your duties, your place in this family. But I was done. Done with being told my place, done with being treated like a nobody. My place, I said, my voice steady, is not here, not with you. I deserve better, and I will have better. The doctor walked in at that moment, breaking the tension. He explained my injuries, the fractures, and the long road to recovery. Ethan and Mrs. Clayton's faces fell as they realized the implications, the weeks of convalescence, the medical expenses, and the absence of their obedient housekeeper. Ethan, his voice laced with frustration, turned to me. If you think you're going to sit back and enjoy a vacation at our expense, you're mistaken. If you're not back on your feet and fulfilling your duties in a month, consider this marriage over. For the first time, his threat didn't scare me, it liberated me. Ethan, I said, a smile tugging at the corners of my bruised lips, I'm ready for that divorce. It's the best news I've heard in months. Their shocked faces were the last things I saw before they stormed out of the room. Lying in that hospital bed, I realized the crash hadn't just broken my bones, it had shattered the chains that bound me. A couple of days after Ethan and Mrs. Clayton's disastrous visit, a nurse wheeled in a small cart with my personal belongings, a bag that Ethan had left for me. Among the items was my laptop, my gateway to the world and, more importantly, to my independence. As I slowly, painfully opened the laptop, the screen welcomed me like an old friend. I was about to embark on the most crucial project of my life, my liberation. I began by drafting an email to my lawyer, detailing the years of financial control, emotional manipulation, and the recent threats from Ethan and his mother. My fingers trembled, but with each word typed, I felt stronger, more in control. A few days later, Ethan came to visit, his demeanor a mix of anger and disbelief. Lily, what's this nonsense about a lawyer? You think you can take me on? He scoffed, his voice echoing off the sterile walls. I looked at him, my resolve unwavering. It's not nonsense, Ethan. It's the truth. I'm done being your puppet. I'm taking back my life, my money, my dignity. He laughed, a cold, harsh sound. You? You don't have the guts. You're nothing without me, without us. But I wasn't the old Lily anymore. Watch me, Ethan. You and your mother have controlled and used me for long enough. Those days are over. His face reddened, a vein throbbing in his neck. You'll regret this, Lily. You'll come crawling back. I shook my head, a small smile playing on my lips. I'd rather crawl through fire than come back to you. After Ethan stormed out, the days blended into weeks. My body was healing, but more importantly, my spirit was healing too. I spent hours reading, learning, and preparing for the battle ahead. The hospital room, once a symbol of my vulnerability, had become my war room. The day I was discharged from the hospital marked the beginning of my new life. Grandma Eleanor, frail but with a spirit as strong as ever, was by my side as I walked out of the hospital. Her eyes, filled with tears of pride and relief, told me all I needed to know. I was on the right path. Grandma, I'm scared, but I'm ready, I told her, my voice steady. She squeezed my hand. I know, my dear. And you're not alone. We're in this together. The journey back to Grandma Eleanor's house was quiet, but it was a silence filled with determination and hope. The old Lily was gone, and in her place stood a woman ready to reclaim her life, one step at a time. The morning of the hearing, Grandma Eleanor and I sat at the kitchen table, a silent understanding between us. Lily, you ready for this? She asked, her voice steady but laced with concern. I nodded, feeling a surge of strength from her unwavering support. I am, Grandma. It's time to put an end to this, once and for all. At the courthouse, the atmosphere was tense. Ethan and Mrs. Clayton were already there, their faces a mask of arrogance and disbelief. They still couldn't fathom that the once submissive Lily was challenging them. As we walked past them, Ethan's voice, cold and mocking, reached my ears. "You really think you can win this, Lily? You're just a nobody." I stopped, turning to face him, my gaze unflinching. "I am somebody, Ethan. And today, you'll see just how much you underestimated me." The court proceedings were a blur, with testimonies given and evidence presented. My lawyer was a pillar of strength, laying out the years of financial and emotional abuse with precision and clarity. Ethan and Mrs. Clayton's lawyer tried to discredit me, painting me as an ungrateful wife. But the recordings I had made, the meticulous records of their controlling behavior, and the financial statements spoke louder than their lies. As the judge pronounced the verdict, favoring me and granting significant compensation, the look of shock and defeat on Ethan and Mrs. Clayton's faces was a sight I would never forget. Outside the courthouse, Ethan approached, his demeanor now that of a defeated man. "Lily, please, let's talk about this. We can settle it without the compensation. You don't have to do this." I looked at him, the man I once believed would protect me, now a mere shadow of his former self. "No, Ethan. You had your chance. You chose to control and abuse instead of love and respect. This is the consequence of your actions." Mrs. Clayton, her pride shattered, joined in, her voice trembling. "Lily, please, I'm an old woman. Have some mercy." I shook my head, the final pieces of the emotional shackles they had bound me with falling away. "Mercy was what I begged for when you controlled every aspect of my life, Mrs. Clayton. It's too late for that now." As Grandma Eleanor and I walked away, the weight of years of oppression lifting off my shoulders, I knew that this was more than just a legal victory. It was the triumph of justice, the affirmation of my strength, and the beginning of a new chapter. But the story didn't end there. News of Ethan's and Mrs. Clayton's actions spread, reaching Ethan's workplace. His colleagues started looking at him differently, whispers followed him around, and soon, his position at work was demoted. He was a shadow of his former self, condemned and despised for his actions. Mrs. Clayton faced her own downfall. She found herself ostracized, her name synonymous with manipulation and cruelty. Decent society closed its doors on her, her past actions casting a long shadow over her present. As for me, life was opening new doors. It was a chance to start fresh, to build a life on my terms. The battle was tough, but it led to a new beginning, a future where I was no longer a victim but the author of my own story. The final reckoning was not just an end, but a promise of a new, brighter dawn.